Deep down in Nubia in 750 BC, a young girl was born. She was the daughter of the Kushite king Kashta. This young princess was named Amenemhat. She was destined for great things.
The Nubians were very much Egyptianized by this time. Because they had been ruled by Egypt for so long, they had already adopted many Egyptian practices, language, and religion.
A sacred mountain in Nubia, now named Jebel Barkal, was one of the most important sites in Egypt and Nubia. This was the second most important site where the god of the gods, Amun, was worshipped, apart from Karnak Temple in Thebes. Amenemhat means the gift of the god Amun. By Kashta naming his daughter this, he had plans to use his daughter to conquer Egypt, by using something Egypt cherished more than anything else, their religion. In 755 BC, Kashta went peacefully into Upper Egypt and went to Thebes. There, he met with the newly appointed god's wife of Amun, named Shepenupet. He convinced Shepenupet to adopt his daughter Amenemhat, as she was seen as divine. She was the gift from Amun after all, and this could not go unnoticed by Shepenupet. This move of placing Amenemhat as the next in line to be the god's wife was now seen as a sign from the gods that the Nubians had the right to invade Egypt. By 744 BC, the Nubian king Kashta had taken his Amun-given right via his daughter and conquered the southern states of Egypt. He placed his name alongside his daughter's in a cartouche, which was reserved only for royals. He became the first Nubian pharaoh of Egypt. However, the north was still in their sights, yet they needed careful planning. Kashta had then died. His son and the brother of Amenemhat, named Piani, succeeded and became the next Nubian pharaoh. An Egyptian prince from the Sais region in the Delta did manage to take control of ancient Memphis, invading with his 8,000 Egyptian soldiers around 730 BC. But Egypt was still divided between the separate ruling states.
All of this fighting within Egypt had left them exposed.
For 1,000 years, the Egyptians' enemies to the south, the Nubians, had been constantly fighting against Egyptian rule in their homeland. The Egyptians had conquered them several times, using them for their vast amounts of natural resources, gold, incense, and more. So much so that the Nubians even had their own god of trading.
What archaeology tells us is that there was a lot of cultural exchange between Nubians and Egyptians. The Kushite kings of the 25th dynasty restored political stability and ended civil unrest in Egypt. Not only that, but they built and restored a lot of Egyptian monuments.
Up in the hills in Luxor, beneath these now abandoned homes, are tombs for nobles from ancient Egypt. This tomb from around 3,400 years ago is for a man called Amenhotep II. This Egyptian man was the Viceroy of Kush, a title that meant that he controlled the tax and trade coming in from Nubia into Egypt. We can see the Kushites, the Nubians from the south, coming into Egypt, bringing offerings and gold. Here is a Nubian princess with a parasol above her chariot, the chariot being pulled by these cows. We can see the Nubians arriving in Egypt, They are arriving with all of their offerings. Arriving before Amenhotep Hoi, the man counting all the offerings, and this being presented by Amenhotep Hoi to Tutankhamun over here. This is a different side to Tutankhamun that we don't usually get to see. For millennia, Nubia bowed to Egypt. However, their time was about to arrive. With Egypt left exposed, the Nubians, and especially the Kushite king, saw their opportunity and seized it.
Egypt was vulnerable. It was probably at its weakest point in all history.
Tired of being under the thumb of the Egyptian pharaohs, in 721 BC, the Nubians took the opportunity. Piani launched a campaign to the north of Thebes and conquered Memphis, becoming the ruler of Upper and Lower Egypt, and the king of Kush. Piani commissioned a stele to be erected, describing his victory over Egypt. He had this stele placed at Jebel Barkal to prove to all that he ruled from northern Egypt to the extremes of Nubia. He is quoted on the stele as saying, "Hear all what I have accomplished by exceeding my ancestors. I am the Pharaoh, the representation of the gods, the living image of Atum, the god issued from the womb, named as the ruler that is feared by those greater than himself, the one whose father knew all, and whose mother perceived even in the conception that he would be the ruler, the great god, beloved of the gods, the son of Ra, who acts with both arms, Piani, beloved of Amun." Apart from this very elaborate inscription claiming his rule, he is also shown being supported by the god Amun and his wife Mut, while the localized Egyptian and Libyan rulers are bowing before him, thus showing their surrender to the Nubians. He also goes as far as to criticize the Egyptians for their mistreatment of their horses, saying that they are emaciated and that the Nubians will show them how to care for these horses. Piani then made a drastic decision. He would allow these localized rulers to then return to their cities. They would not have much power, yet they were now in the employ of Piani as his concessional supervisors. This included Shepenupet in Thebes. Placing this power on Shepenupet would ensure that when Amuniadris succeeded the position, the rule of Thebes would still be within the Nubian family, thus cementing their power even more. You see, unlike the Egyptian tradition that dictates that a male must be the heir or the ruler in power, the Nubians favored the maternal line of the family, and thus women often became rulers in Nubia. Shortly before the Nubian invasion, male priests in Thebes had been in control for quite a while of their religion. They had become more powerful than the pharaoh. A northern pharaoh made sure that his daughter would come to hold a high title in Thebes. She was a priestess, known as the god's wife. The title of the god's wife meant that you were spiritually married to Amun, a task that was generally appointed to the wife of a pharaoh in Egypt's new kingdom. This daughter, who was appointed god's wife of Amun in Thebes, was none other than Amuniadris's adoptive mother, Shepenupet. Holding the role of god's wife, she was to perform certain daily rituals to appease the gods. She was on the same level as the high priest of Amun. However, something was about to change all of that. She set about to change thousands of years of tradition. Shepenupet must have been a strong-willed woman, as she then garnered up enough support in Thebes to become more important than the male high priest. With Egypt being in its own chaos, Shepenupet then claimed Amun had appointed her the lord of Upper and Lower Egypt, a bold claim that had never been heard of before. She is shown at Karnak and on many of her statues with these titles, as well as her own birth and new throne name in a cartouche. Shepenupet may not have really controlled the north, as her title claims, as we know other so-called pharaohs who also ruled. However, it was enough for her to maintain a female line of the rule in Thebes.
The adoption of a Nubian princess, Amunidris, as God's wife of Amun, in many ways legitimized Nubian rule in Thebes. God's wife was a position that worked as a mediator between the king and God. It's also a position that held a lot of power, including controlling the economic resources at the temple of Amun in Thebes. Her adoption to become Shepenupet's successor would have been marked with a lavish ceremony. She would have been given properties and staff.
Adopting Amunidris, the gift of Amun, was not only benefiting the Nubians' claims to the throne, but also Shepenupet. If she was seen as the mother of Amunidris, it meant that Amun did truly choose her to rule Thebes, and of course, the god's wife was the earthly manifestation of the goddess Mut, the wife of Amun. On the back of a statue of Amunidris, Shepenupet is listed as her mother given by the god.
Shepenupet does seem a little shy to fully throw her titles around.
She did build a temple in the domain of the male priests at Karnak. However, the small temple was built far away from the main temple. At the edge of Karnak, Shepenupet built this temple, usually closed to the public. Although small, the images make a large statement. Here Shepenupet shows herself as the god's wife, yet she is holding the flail, a kingly implement, as well as the double cobra on her brow, again a male symbol of kingship. The carvings are done in Egyptian style, yet they are Nubianized. In her temple, she also names Amunidris as her successor. The close bond between the two, adoptive mother and daughter, can be appreciated. Shepenupet is breastfeeding the child Amunidris. Amunidris's brother, the current pharaoh, Shabaka, did, however, reinstall the male high priest of Amun, a post that had been vacant for many years, as the god's wife was more elevated. He appointed his son as high priest of Amun at Karnak, yet he remained under the authority of Amunidris, who ruled Thebes. This male high priest was Prince Horemheb. Today, we can see a unique statue of the Nubian man in Aswan.
This statue is of a Nubian high priest. His name is Horemheb. And Horemheb is actually the name of the great Sphinx of Giza. So it's very interesting that he took the same name of Horemheb, the horizon of Horus. He's a high priest from Nubia, and he's the only person that we have shown with an Ankh necklace around his neck. the only person in the whole of Egyptian statuary, he was shown unique.
His statue states, King Shabaka's beloved son, director of the palace of the king of Upper and Lower Egypt, Horemheb, may he live for eternity.
This hallway in Karnak had these beautiful columns that were erected by a Nubian pharaoh named Taharka.
This expansion had to be approved by the god's wife, Shepenupet II. However, all that remains now of Taharka's monuments is this one giant pillar. Taharka had a daughter. He named her after Amenemhat. Amenemhat II was also adopted by Shepenupet II and named as the heiress to the god's wife title. Shepenupet II did not raise Amenemhat II in the same way Amenemhat I was raised by Shepenupet I. Rather, there was a wet nurse named Tashrean who would be the one who raises Amenemhat II. The nurse's tomb treasures can now be found in the Egyptian Museum in Florence, Italy.
Tashrean, the nanny of the daughter of Pharaoh Taharka. She looked after Amenemhat. And here we have the nanny's death mask. It's probably the biggest death mask I've ever seen. It is absolutely enormous. But think about, in the 25th dynasty, when Princess Amenemhat was adopted, and this Egyptian woman looked after her. And for that, Taharka, who was ruling Egypt as a Nubian at that time, had her put into such an elaborate burial.
Tashrean was buried with a large wooden coffin, which was housed inside an even larger wooden shrine. In Belgium, at the Art and History Museum, I've come to see a mummy of what could possibly be Taharka's son.
This mummy is of a very, very young boy. He is from the 25th dynasty, which means he's actually Nubian when the Nubians invaded Egypt and they ruled. So this little boy is most likely a Nubian prince. And we can tell he's royal from the arms that are crossed in the Osiris pose. That was generally reserved for royals. But also the quality of his burial, he's covered with very thick resin. He's got packing in his stomach to fill out the body. So when you are dried out, you don't, suck in. He's quite incredible to look at. And he's got this beautiful little anthropoid coffin, and it's got the Osiris beard with the curve on the end. There are no visible names because it's been varnished with some sort of resin, so we can't really see the names underneath. But this young boy, you could just imagine, he was a prince of a Nubian king.
Throughout history, we have witnessed innumerable women who have written their names for all to remember, but none come close to the iconic Egyptian female pharaoh, Hatshepsut. She ruled in a world where male domination was prevalent. Born into one of Egypt's most powerful dynasties, she came from a long line of great feminine role models who changed the course of history in their own right.
I've always loved Hatshepsut. She is a strong woman who took over, she ruled, she was a great diplomat.
Hatshepsut didn't inherit the throne, she was compelled to take it. Her father had died, her weaker brother had died, and the only male heir was an infant. She did what had only happened once before, hundreds of years prior.
In images from this period, she was the pharaoh.
The male ruler, but as a woman, setting a standard for all future female rulers.
not just doing this in an ordinary way, but in an extraordinary one.
Hatshepsut was not just some political figure. New research can prove that she was a warrior, fighting for the rights of her country.
When a man says he led a campaign, we tend to take it at face value. When a woman does, we question it.
For years, Hatshepsut has been subject to controversy and conspiracy.
There are some people in the past few years that have tried to push the narrative that Hatshepsut must have been transgender.
Hatshepsut dressed as a man to convince the Egyptian that she has the right to be a pharaoh. But we announce something with evidence.
They are misunderstanding a lot of the cultural references of the time.
Now, we are setting the record straight. Get close up to her monuments to find their real meaning and discover the secrets we overlook.
Hatshepsut, who has deified herself.
One of the evidence, Hatshepsut did anything bad to Thutmose III.
But she's capitalizing upon political theology.
We are setting out on a quest to unravel the full life of Hatshepsut like never before.
She died because of cancer. Means Thutmose III did not murder her.
Revealing the true story of one of the greatest pharaohs and rulers of all time, Hatshepsut.
The most powerful woman in history.
Join myself, Curtis Ryan Woodside, and many Egyptologists as we tell the story of Hatshepsut. This is her story. The early life of Hatshepsut is really not well documented. What we can work out comes rarely from her predecessors and family members. Hatshepsut was born within the first year of her father Thutmose I's reign. She had a younger full sister, Binefru. Unfortunately, this sister died while still a child. Hatshepsut would then honor this young sister on the wall of her temple. This demonstrates the care she has for her family. This was prevalent in the 18th dynasty. Her father, Thutmose I, had a secondary wife, known as Mutnofret. From this second queen, Hatshepsut had 3 elder half-brothers. These brothers were well documented. To discover more about her family, we must travel just south of Luxor. At El Kab, these brothers of Hatshepsut are mentioned in one of the nobles' tombs. Paheri was a scribe, priest of the vulture goddess Nekbet, and mayor of Nekheb. Having also served under Hatshepsut's father, Thutmose I, he is also shown in this tomb with 2 of Hatshepsut's brothers. One scene, he is giving them offerings, yet in another, his true role is revealed. Here, the young prince, Wajmos, is seated on the lap of Paheri. Paheri and his father are both named as the official tutors to the princes of Thutmose I. The image of the young royal on the lap of their tutor in the 18th dynasty was one of prestige, a tradition that even Hatshepsut would continue in her own reign. This would tell us that somewhere out there would also have been a tutor for the princess, which would reveal that Hatshepsut would have received a very high level of education for the time. Around 1492 BC, the first child between Thutmose II and his half-sister Hatshepsut was born. Their daughter was named Neferura. This young princess would become one of the most important people in Egypt when her mother would eventually become pharaoh. Hatshepsut did not bear any more children. Thutmose II married a second wife, who was named Iset. It would be Queen Iset that would deliver the crucially important male heir to the throne. In 1481 BC, 11th ruling year of Pharaoh Thutmose II, his second wife Iset gives birth to the only male heir. They named the new prince Thutmose III. The long length of reign is more plausible for a few reasons. His and Hatshepsut's daughter Neferura is shown with them and appears to be older. We know that Thutmose III was 2 years old when his father died. If Thutmose II only ruled for 3 years, this would not be a sufficient amount of time to be showing a more grown-up Neferura. Had she been 13 years old, this would be sufficient. The plan would be for Hatshepsut to pass on her role of God's wife to her daughter Neferura, and then for the queen to become, in effect, the king, a fully ruling woman, shown with the male ruling regalia. Senmut was very close to Neferura whilst being her tutor. We see unique statues commissioned by Senmut himself, where he is shown with the young Neferura on his lap, the standard scene for a tutor of a royal. Regardless, Hatshepsut trusted this man so much to give him such an important role as the mentor of the daughter and the heir to the god's wife's title.
This is actually showing us the god's wife, Neferura, the daughter of Hatshepsut. We can see her here wearing the crown of Mut with the 2 feathers of Amun and the vulture crown. And here is the princess, Neferura, holding out an incense burner, burning it to a god that is now missing. But on the side here, we can see Neferura's cartouche, sort of damaged, but we still see the Ra and some Nefer signs going down. Senmut also came to Serebit al-Khadem, and on this stela, which was quite amazing, we can see Neferura right here offering an incense cone to Hathor. Here's Neferura's cartouche. You can see the 3 Nefers, which is the plural for Neferu, Ra, with the sun god on top. But behind Neferura is this man who is holding a fan, and this is talking about the time that they came here to give offerings to the Lady of Turquoise, Hathor. But this man is Senmut, and his name is right above. So it's great that Senmut also wanted to be documented at this place, going there with Hatshepsut and her daughter and Thutmose.
The Hebsed was clearly a very important event for Hatshepsut, a time that probably filled her with great joy and pride. It would be in this same year, however, that not one, but 2 tragedies would strike Hatshepsut. Her beloved daughter, the god's wife of Amun, has died. Hatshepsut must have been broken-hearted by this and would have gone into the traditional 70 days of mourning. She had no other direct heir, nor did Neferura have a child. Neferura would have been around 28 years old. Because her death appears to be sudden, Hatshepsut buried her in an unfinished tomb. She chose the valley on the opposite side of the Valley of the Kings, more near what we call today the Valley of the Queens. This was near the tomb Hatshepsut abandoned construction on when she became pharaoh in year 7 of Thutmose III's reign. Hatshepsut chose a very bizarre location, high up in the cliffs of the valley. Perhaps it was to protect her daughter's body from future vandals. The tomb was roughly cut, the walls were plastered but not decorated, with only the cartouche of Neferura inside, as well as a red scarab with the princess's cartouche. This well-hidden tomb was discovered by Howard Carter, the same man that discovered the tomb of Tutankhamun. Howard Carter even left his name graffitied inside, something quite common for him, as he did this innumerable times throughout his travels in Egypt. Senmut is known to have not married nor conceived any children, and even his half-brother is said to perform the funerary rites on him, not a son. The last date in Senmut's final tomb is around year 15 or 16 of Hatshepsut's reign. There is no mention of Neferura in his tomb, which is rather strange, since he commissioned several statues of them together. From this we can understand that Neferura was already dead by the time these inscriptions were made. outside Senenmut's original tomb. We learn he did, however, intend to include Neferura. He commissioned 2 statues of himself with Neferura as a child on his lap, again showing their close relationship. There is, however, a larger statue nearby. This statue has an obscure side to it. It has been suggested for many years now that Horemheb did not have children with his 2 wives. However, all of that may soon be changing. Egyptology is a forever evolving science, as new discoveries are made and old discoveries are re-examined. The presence of an obscure queen named Tanejmet around this time period has started to help link the dynastic progression better. It is now believed that Tanejmet was the daughter of Horemheb, yet this daughter could not become a male pharaoh. Therefore, he needed to marry off his daughter to the chosen successor, much like the issue that befell Tutankhamun's sister wife. In Luxor, on the West Bank, in the Valley of the Queens, there we find traces of Tanejmet. Although her tomb is badly damaged, inside there remains one image of her, and next to her remaining face, there are 2 titles that we can make out clearly. She is named as the daughter of the king, as well as wife of the king. Since we do not know of any daughters from the next pharaohs with the name Tanejmet, she must be the daughter of an earlier one, Horemheb, and it is entirely possible that Horemheb had his only daughter married to his successor, Ramses I, to link the Ramesside family to the royal bloodline, thus legitimizing Ramses I's rise to power. Ramses I was buried in a rather modest tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Although small, the tomb exudes his devotion to the gods, as he is depicted in direct contact with several deities. Much like Ramses I, who performed the final rites at the burial of Horemheb, Seti was tasked with this act, as he was the son of the pharaoh, and thus he was now the next in line. Ramses II would also have been present at this funeral, and it no doubt would have been an eye-opener for the young prince who would have to perform the same ceremony once his father would go to meet with the god of the next life. Seti became pharaoh, and this would also be the start of his son Ramses II's great journey to become the most celebrated king Egypt had ever seen. By the age of 9, Ramses had been exposed to the public. Seti wanted it known that his son would succeed him, as part of Seti's campaign to let it be known that the great acts that took place in his father's reign was his doing. He also set out to introduce the world to his son. There are several carvings and statues showing the child Ramses. One of the most telling is a giant granite statue. Seti and his wife had a daughter first, before Ramses was born. Her name was Tiye. This eldest sister of Ramses was born in the reign of Horemheb. She was appointed as singer in the temple at Heliopolis in the Delta. Since the family were not royals by the time she was old enough to marry, she wed a non-royal scribe named Tiye. It would be Tiye that was given the role of chief tutor to Ramses while he was still a young prince, teaching him how to read and write hieroglyphic script. Here Seti would prove to the gods that he and his family were worthy of the crown. It is also here that we see that Seti began closely, personally training Ramses. In one of the chambers of the temple is Seti's declaration that the Ramessides were worthy, the King's List, a chronological list of kings up to the reign of Ramses II. Seti stands tall. In front of Pharaoh is Prince Ramses. As a young boy, he holds out a scroll of papyrus and reads the names of the past pharaohs aloud, while predicting his own reign to come. Seti and his queen Mut-Toy had an elder son named Nebshaset-Nebet. This brother of Ramses II was listed in one inscription at Heliopolis. Here, Ramses' eldest brother was in fact named as the crowned prince, meaning that still within year 1 of Seti's reign, he was the named successor. Though he disappears after this, it would appear that he died in the first campaign with Seti against the Hittites. Thus, all of the monuments that Seti built after his first year had no mention of Neb-Shaset-Nebet at all, and the line jumped straight to Ramses.
But the most amazing thing is this image of Ramses II being suckled by a goddess. Isn't it just amazing? The young prince with a beautiful goddess. Here he offers jars to Ra, Horus. I've never seen Ramses in so much color. Before, Amun and Amun-Min, right over here, inside this inner sanctum, would have been probably a golden statue dedicated to Ramses II, because in fact, Ramses declared he was a god. So Ramses would have been in here. We see Ptah on the other side. Amun again being burnt incense of frankincense by Ramses II. Khnum, the creator god, creating life for Ramses. Khnum gave life to Ramses because Ramses lived until he was around 96. And the life from Khnum that went into Ramses created over 150 children. And here is the goddess Anuket, yet again suckling the young prince when he was probably around 13 years old, because Ramses became a co-regent with Seti, his father, at around 16 years old. So here he is being prepared, he is being fed by the goddess to become the pharaoh.
Isetnofret also produced a male heir who shares his first name with his father. These young princes would have known Seti. They were clearly around during celebrations with Pharaoh Seti and their crown prince father, Ramses. Some scenes at Abydos show Ramses, Seti, and the young princes together performing ceremonies. In the second last year of Seti's reign, Ramses and some of his sons were sent to Nubia to yet again subdue them. This was a minor event, but enough for the Nubians to remember later on. Ramses is not shown in Seti's tomb performing the opening of the mouth as we saw in the tombs just a few years prior. However, the tomb's designer, named Baki, did ensure that Ramses' presence was in the tomb. On an ostraca from the tomb builder's village belonging to Baki, we can see his drafts. One side of the stone shows Pharaoh Seti, yet on the back of the ostraca is an image of a young prince, Ramses, the son of Seti. In Seti's tomb, there is a pillar showing a man dressed as a priest, draped in a leopard pelt. He has the side lock of youth. This image is Baki's way to include Ramses in the tomb. This man is Ramses. We have seen Ramses depicted like this throughout Seti's reign. This was a huge parade that went down the Avenue of Sphinxes. Leading the procession was Ramses and Nefertari, with their sons in tow.
The sacrificial bulls being brought down, they have the heads of the enemies shown on their horns, being brought down by the sons of Ramses II. Underneath them, there's a small graffiti of the god Amun-Min, the god of fertility. Clearly, Ramses was very fertile, having all of these sons. They are bringing the bulls to be sacrificed within the temple of Waset, the temple of Luxor. And here is the temple depicted, with the seated statues on the outside and the standing statues at the edge. We have the flags and the two obelisks, a perfect representation of the temple that we are in right now.
Ramses began gathering his troops. His principal sons, born from Nefertari and Iset-Nofret, also gathered in Pyramids to accompany their father in battle. We have Ramses' sons, his firstborn sons, starting with Amun-Herkhepshef, many sons that would ultimately go into battle with Ramses. In scenes here, we can see 3 of Ramses' sons that accompanied him into battle. It was quite a family operation for Ramses II. The young princes are indicated from the side lock of hair, here with his brothers, his name written out, Amun-Herkhepshef. Ramses' sons are of course in this temple, lined up in order of birth. The daughters were also joined in this temple. One daughter in particular, Henutawe, had special significance at the Ramesseum. She lived here with her mother. She was the youngest daughter of Nefertari. In 1907, a statue of Henutawe was found at the Ramesseum. The beautiful princess sits on a throne. The back of her statue reveals she held a very important role, proving that Ramses' sons and daughters, who were not destined to rule Egypt, were still highly regarded. The glyphs reveal that she was the overseer of the royal barge rowers. When Ramses visited after returning from Kadesh, he ordered a new pylon wall and canal large enough to welcome barges to the front of the temple. Although the pylon is now almost in ruin, the remains give us possibly the clearest depictions of the Battle of Kadesh. He took it upon himself to show the principal sons what being a pharaoh was all about. A mesmerizing scene at Abydos shows Ramses and Prince Amun-Herkhepshef in training while capturing a sacrificial bull. The brave prince grabs the bull literally by the tail, while Pharaoh Ramses throws a rope lasso around to capture the animal. Ramses then led a siege of the Hittite city of Dapur. This was one of Ramses' best planned battles. He recorded the siege of Dapur at the Ramesseum. An absolute chaotic scene unfolded. The Egyptians arrived with many new techniques. They climbed the walls of the city with giant ladders. Ramses and his men trampled over the Hittites and fired arrows as they fell from the city. The women and children were spared. The Hittites at Dapur were no match for the Egyptians. Another new invention seemed to greatly help their victory. These strange dome shapes, which can be likened to military tanks. The soldiers could be protected under them and walk right up to the city.
Tell me your surprise.
This is something that I have been examining for a while, and it's something people don't really look at because there's so much happening. In this war scene, we can see, you see these strange dome shapes?
Yes, I see it.
What is your take on these dome shapes?
I saw it before, but I couldn't understand what it is.
So these are wooden domes that would be placed over the people. You can see a man crawling out from underneath the dome. And they would use this like a turtle to go along the ground to avoid being hit by arrows from, from the people they're at war with. So you can actually see.
So it's the first tank in human being history.
Almost like a tank. This man is holding up this big shield while the other man is coming out of the shield. So it's a shell.
Yes, like shell.
Yeah. So you see this man he's looking out, going, what's going on? Well,
and this man, the one who left this.
Yeah.
And this man, the one who fight.
Yeah. And these are another man holding it up. So these are like
the first idea of tank.
Yeah.
The first idea of tank in human being history.
And what makes this very special is these are Ramses' sons. So when they went to battle, Ramses' sons actually had extra protection.
Because they are princes.
Yeah, they're princes. They are heirs to the throne. So this is really interesting to examine.
It's very, very interesting, and thank you very much to let me know this.
There's all of these different techniques for war. We have the lions, we have these shields, we have so many different techniques that still
more about in different ideas, yes.
Yeah.
It's still alive in different ideas.
Exactly.
Tank, we can say the first tank.
Yeah. This is what this is.
Only I know about this scene, to be honest with you. These guys, they tried to escape from Ramses II arrow, and this guy, he shocked by arrow in his bum.
Yeah.
Ramses' fourth son, yet the second son from his second wife, Isetnofret, now that the wars had seemingly calmed down, was sent to Memphis and made a deputy priest of Ptah. This son was Khaemwaset. This trusted son of Ramses would become part of the Ramses mythology. Khaemwaset was further educated in Memphis and was destined to become the high priest of Ptah. It was while living at Memphis that Khaemwaset would travel to many of the Delta sites that had already been there for thousands of years. Although many of these temples of the kings of the Old Kingdom were abandoned by now due to the disruption by Akhenaten and his religious revolution, only a few years prior, the prince would have seen that many of these sites had been left in disarray, and many were in very poor condition after thousands of years in the ancient Egyptian weather. Khaemwaset proposed a vast countrywide restoration project to his father Ramses. The project would include the restoration of the old cult temples of previous pharaohs going all the way back to the Third Dynasty, as well as reinstating priests to worship these ancestors once again. Khaemwaset also set out to restore major monuments in his father's name. Many of the pyramids were decaying. Khaemwaset had these restored. He restored the pyramid of Sahura at Abu Sir, the pyramid of Userkaf, and at Saqqara, the pyramid of Unas from the 5th dynasty was part of this restoration, with Khaemwaset having Ramses' name stamped on the outside, stating that Ramses and Khaemwaset had restored the tomb of Unas. This prince did not stop at only restoring. He also added additions to existing statues of other kings. Many previous pharaohs often changed names on statues of their ancestors. This was a common practice in Egypt for a pharaoh.
What is your opinion on Ramses II changing so many of the statues and the names? We know he's not the only pharaoh who did this.
But some people think that when the king put his name on a statue is to remove the history of this king. That's not true. When Ramses II put his name on a statue, he tried to renew the past, to renew the history of this person, not to damage his history.
Yeah. taking on that energy from that pharaoh.
Exactly.
Ramses is often given a bad reputation for this, yet many kings did this. Thutmosis III, Sesostris, etc. Almost every ruler of Egypt had statues of previous kings altered. Although the number of statues Ramses had usurped is most likely very little, as he did rule for an unprecedented time, and had the time to have his own statues commissioned. The usurping and altering of a few previous pharaohs' images would only have been a ritual act to connect to the king. Since Ramses and his family were not of royal blood, this was a way of showing through this usurpation of statues that Ramses was connected with previous kings of the land, and Khaemwaset was the one who helped with this task. Khaemwaset can be seen as the first ever Egyptologist. The prince would spend most of his years visiting tombs, reading and writing down what he saw. In some cases, making sure that tombs were secured and restored. The prince would then become a hermit-like creature and live underground in Saqqara at the Serapeum, where he studied and wrote the histories of Egypt while among the mummified Apis bulls. Khaemwaset was rewarded for much of his work by Ramses, being commemorated on the side of a colossal statue of the pharaoh in Memphis. This beautiful statue of Ramses was erected at the Temple of Ptah at Memphis and is one of the best ever crafted statues, not just of Ramses, but of any pharaoh in history. The fallen giant features the son of Ramses, Khaemwaset, on the side of his leg, supporting his father, while on the other side is Khaemwaset's sister, Bintanath, who would play an important role in Ramses' life much later on. Throughout Egypt, we can find colossal statues of Ramses, from Memphis to Karnak, all crafted with precision.
This fallen statue of Ramses II allows us to see up close some details that we might miss. You can see the expert craftsmanship of the ancient Egyptians. You can see the muscle here that bends around and goes in. And over here, the nerves, as the pharaoh is gripping his hand, you can see how tense his hand is. Underneath, you can see the fine curve of his back leading down to his leg, with again the muscles that are visible, not overly visible, just subtle enough to get the idea of the musculature of the pharaoh.
Khaemwaset and Ramses' exploration and re-veneration of the past pharaohs was not only contained to Memphis. They arrived at Giza. Burial site for the family, officials, and pharaohs of the 4th dynasty. The tomb of Medes Ankh, the princess of the builder of the Great Pyramid, was on their list of visited sites, as well as her husband, Kawab. Khaemwaset had an inscription added to the statue of Kawab. Nearby this tomb in front of the Great Pyramid, Ramses and his prince commissioned a small temple and dedicated it to Isis. Although ransacked through the millennia, some fragments of Ramses' temple remain here.
Standing next to their parents are the children of Ramses and Nefertari. Here is a young prince. On this side is another young prince, shown with their beautiful side lock of youth. And what's interesting is, beneath the father, we have the sons. And next to the mother, we have the daughters.
Though Nefertari came down on the barge with Ramses and his family, there is one sad monument here that many overlook that tell us the reality of the situation.
Possibly the saddest scene here at Abu Simbel is on a stela on the side. It is showing Nefertari seated on a throne, enclosed by a canopy that usually was associated with death. We see Ramses II with their daughter Meret Amun offering to the gods. Nefertari is seated below because at this point she had already died.
This stela is even created in a way that resembles an altar with steps leading to it. This sad scene indicates to us that Nefertari never got off the boat to see the inside of her temple. She was too ill. Ramses had more sons and daughters than any other pharaoh, over 150. Where were they to be buried? Especially the sons. These were potential pharaohs by being the son of Ramses. A great project was planned for princes that would not become pharaoh. One by one, they would eventually be buried in a large tomb complex in the Valley of the Kings, across from the tomb of Ramses himself, now known as KV5. The tomb was expanded constantly during Ramses' reign, to have now 150 chambers, each destined for a son. The sad reality is that Ramses outlived many of his children. Just 1 year after Nefertari died, in 1254 BC, the 25th year of Ramses' reign, their son, Parar-Nebenef, died. A big blow to the pharaoh to see one of his first sons die. Parar-Nebenef was the first to be buried in KV5. Still grieving from Nefertari's death, now one of his principal sons would die. Only a few months after the death of Parar-Nebenef, the firstborn son from Nefertari, the crowned prince, Amun-Herkhepeshef, also died. As each of his sons would eventually be interred in the tomb, they would pass a variety of finely decorated hallways, and before entering the burial chambers, they would pass a statue of Osiris. The statue was in the form of Ramses as Osiris, thus the pharaoh would oversee the steps for each son to enter into the next life personally as the god of the next life himself. Although much of the tomb was looted in antiquity and damaged by flooding and earthquakes, many objects were discovered, reinforcing the fact that it was intended for Ramses' sons. There were many pottery shards, Ushabti figurines, and canopic jars. All of these objects contained several of the names of Ramses' sons, but the most interesting finds were the human remains of two of the princes with their skeletons intact. Up to 6 skulls have been found in the tomb, showing that the princes were buried there. However, probably due to the large family, not every prince was given the full mummification process. Egypt needed a queen. Ramses then chose his first daughter from Nefertari, Meret Amun, to become the new great royal wife. It is important to note that Meret Amun served only as a ceremonial wife of Ramses. They did not have a sexual relationship, nor did they have children. Ramses disapproved of interfamilial relations, all due to the incestual downfall of the family of Tutankhamun. Meret Amun had a great position in the royal court. She was in effect the replacement of Nefertari, who had been trained by Nefertari in how to serve the country. Meret Amun was honored on many monuments throughout Egypt. She is shown on many large statues of Ramses carved by his side with a supportive hand raised. At Karnak, Ramses erected a colossal statue of himself in the first courtyard. This unique commission features a queen in a smaller scale standing in the front of the pharaoh. This beautiful woman is none other than Meketaten. Further north in the city of the god Min, named Akhmin, the temple of Ramses had a colossal statue of Meketaten erected. One of the biggest dedications to a royal daughter ever. This beautiful stone image of Meketaten is wearing a Greek button earring of Nefertari. She must have inherited them from her mother. Around 1248 BC, the 32nd year of Ramses' reign, his beloved daughter and new great royal wife, Meketaten, who had served in many royal roles, including the Singer of Atum and the Oracle of Hathor, sadly died. She too was mummified at the Ramesseum, where this incredibly beautiful statue of her was installed. She was buried in the Valley of the Queens in tomb number 68. Although once well decorated, the tomb was badly damaged during the Christian period. Some scenes remain showing Meketaten dressed similarly to her mother Nefertari, and interestingly, a badly damaged wall shows Meketaten before Osiris as Ramses. Egypt, needing a queen to rule alongside Ramses, announced the new great royal wife, another daughter of Ramses and Nefertari, named Nebetawe, although around 1247 BC, Nebetawe also passed away. Yet again, Ramses was in a grieving state. He buried his daughter in the Valley of the Queens in Tomb 60. Very few images of the queen remain on the walls. From the graffiti showing the cross, we know that her tomb was repurposed later as a Christian worship site. In 1246 BC, the 34th year of Ramses' reign saw the conclusion of the discussion to marry a Hittite princess. The princess was sent with an escort of Egyptian soldiers. She was sent with a great dowry in tow, including Hittite soldiers, chariots filled with gold, silver and bronze, cattle, sheep, as well as 300 servants. Upon arriving in Pyramids, shortly after Ramses' second jubilee, the princess was given a new name, Mahat Hor Neferu. She was then also given the title of Great Royal Wife. To keep the Egyptian rule in the queenly roles, however, Ramses' sister, Henumitra, was also named as Great Royal Wife now. To commemorate this marriage to the Hittite princess, Ma'at Hor Neferu, Ramses' new viceroy of Kush, named Hoi, who replaced the disgraced predecessor after the Abu Simbel earthquake incident, placed a new stela at Abu Simbel, showing their union. The stela also claims that this marriage proves the surrender of the Hittites, and that they would now give yearly tribute to the pharaoh. Shortly after their marriage, Ma'at Hor Neferu gave birth to a daughter. To give thanks for this, Queen Pudahipa came for a royal visit to Egypt to, as she said, pour oils over her daughter's head. After this event, Ma'at Hor Neferu was sent to oversee the harem in Fayum. A papyrus letter from the Hittite princess was discovered asking Ramses to send a specific length of linen to make dresses. During Ramses' 38th reigning year, when he was around the age of 63, an uprising started in Nubia. Ramses had to keep the Nubians under control to ensure the tribute of gold and organic goods kept flowing into Egypt. Being at a rather extended age, with a fourth jubilee approaching, Ramses' religious roles were far too important at this stage. Ramses did not and could not take part in the suppressing of the Nubians again. He sent his army into Nubia without the pharaoh following, led by his current crown prince, a son of Isetnofret, also named Ramses. The army and the prince were victorious over the Nubians again, and returned to Egypt with over 7,000 Nubian captives and mounds of gold. During this time, Ramses' sister and great royal wife, Henumitra, also died. She was buried in Tomb 75 in the Valley of the Queens. Like many of Ramses' queens, her tomb too had not escaped vandals. Her sarcophagus was reused around 100 years later by a priest, and the tomb was harmed during the Christian period. The role of the great royal wife would now fall to the firstborn daughter of Isetnofret. Her name was Bintanath. She would be honored as great royal wife in the new temples in Nubia, which would be inaugurated in year 44 of Ramses' reign in 1236 BC.
As you walk up, you hear the echoes coming back to you from the temple walls. Ramses standing here with a beautiful woman at his side. Let's go see. It's actually one of Ramses' daughters,
named Bintanath.
Around year 25 of Ramses' reign, she is given the title of Great Royal Wife, although she wasn't a wife in that sense, since Ramses and his late wife, Nefertari, disapproved of inbreeding. Bintanath's name is Semitic of Canaanite origin. This mighty statue was found at Memphis, the capital, during Ramses II's reign. On the side of the statue is one of Ramses II's daughters, named Bintanath.
Henutsen and Khufu had 3 sons together, 2 of which were buried in mastaba tombs near their father and mother, namely Minkaf, who served as the vizier to his father toward the end of his reign. Minkaf's giant granite sarcophagus can now be viewed in the Cairo Museum. The next son was Khufu Khaf, the herder of the sacred Apis bull. His tomb was directly in front of his mother's pyramid. His tomb was elaborately decorated inside and out, with many scenes showing the prince with his mother and his wife. Outside his tomb is a broken image of Khufu Khaf and his father, Khufu. It is evident that the male behind is Khufu, from the ceremonial bull's tail worn only by the pharaoh at the back of his kilt. Another brother of Khufu, named Ankhaf, was also interred in a tomb with the family in Giza. Ankhaf played a big role in the building of Khufu's pyramid. He was the overseer of the Lake of Khufu, Ra-She Khufu. According to the papyrus of Merer, this was a stopping and control point for the transportation of the stone blocks to build the Great Pyramid. This area was under control of Ankhaf. He then later raised his status to vizier. A tomb at Giza from the reign of Khufu has one of the most beautiful scenes from the Old Kingdom. The daughter of Khufu, Nefertiti, is shown seated before offerings. She's shown with long black hair, wearing an exquisite leopard print dress, which does impress much. Many of Khufu's family were in high-powered positions, including high priests and priestesses, indicated through the leopard print. The burials spread to a nephew of Khufu named Hemiunu. His tomb was discovered in 1912 on the western side, around high officials' tombs. His large mastaba is badly damaged. However, a marvelous statue of Hemiunu remains, showing the man in a lifelike manner. The statue names him as the architect of Khufu. This man designed the Great Pyramid.
This place left in ruin contains so many secrets and so many unanswered questions. Although the majority of the temple extensions come from the New Kingdom, it can be traced as far back as the 4th dynasty. Lined with columns, this shrine was built by Pharaoh Snefru, his name very clearly on the wall. Yet behind Pharaoh Snefru is a very interesting figure. This is a young prince, and this is possibly Pharaoh Khufu, the builder of the Great Pyramid. Yet if this was built before the death of Rahoteep, this could in fact show Rahoteep as the crowned prince and the then successor to Pharaoh Snefru. And if that was Prince Khufu, that is the only wall image that we have of his face remaining. Snefru ruled Egypt around 2600 BC. Here we see Snefru standing among the gods, including Sopdu. Some Egyptologists suggest that this scene was dedicated to Snefru in the 12th dynasty, yet there's no evidence of this. Snefru had much turquoise mined here, and we know that he even gave some turquoise jewelry to his wife, Queen Hetepheres, for which Snefru thanked Hathor.
Neserka, a priestess of the goddess Hathor and Khufu's spirit, has one of the most delicately decorated. She is thought to be the daughter of Pharaoh Sahura, a later 5th dynasty king. She may have even been the descendant of the high official Senib, the famed dwarf from the reign of Khufu. A descendant of Senib, named Senakt, is shown in the priestess's tomb. Her tomb also features the name of a son and successor of Khufu, who is shrouded in speculation, Jedefra. Khufu was not the immediate successor of Pharaoh Snefru. A prince, son of Snefru, and brother of Khufu, was the first in line to the throne. Yet this prince died young, and his brother Khufu became the successor. Rahoteep and his wife Nofret were buried in a mastaba tomb by the unfinished pyramid of Snefru at Maidum. Their statues are some of the most realistic and lifelike in all of Egyptian art. Their perfectly rendered features and eyes give us the best idea of what the 4th dynasty Egyptians resembled. As for the successor of Khufu, this should have been Prince Kawab, the eldest son of Khufu. Yet, he died suddenly, leaving his wife Hetepheres II behind. Kawab's brother married Hetepheres II and was named as Pharaoh upon Khufu's death, becoming Pharaoh Jedefra. Naturally, speculation surrounds Kawab's death, leaning toward the idea that Jedefra killed him to become Pharaoh, linked with the fact that he married Hetepheres II to secure his succession, and built his pyramid away from Giza. He only ruled for 7 years before being succeeded by his brother. Hetepheres II lived a very long life, dying in the reign of the 4th dynasty king Shepseskaf. And interestingly, she was not buried near Jedefra, but rather Kawab, her first husband. The guardian of the diadem, which leads us back to the Cairo Museum, with its almost endless hallways and secret rooms filled with overlooked treasures,
where we can still see one of these 4th Dynasty diadems. This golden diadem sits atop what looks like a bust or a reserve head of a princess, but you would be wrong. In fact, this is the head of a princess's mummy. Mummification evolved over time. Around the 4th and 5th dynasty, for a short period, mummies were coated in mud and then plaster, in an experiment to preserve the deceased's facial features, rendering them more lifelike. For these men and women, especially royals, their faces needed to be recognizable to the gods to enter heaven. Examples of these are rare, but some have skulls visible through the broken coverings. Like the princess, her skull still visible, head broken off near a beautiful faience beaded necklace. Looking at her, this is as lifelike as an ancient could get. 1,000 years after the death of Khafra, during the 18th dynasty, a young prince named Thutmosis IV erected a stele between the paws of the Sphinx, or, in its ancient name, Horemheb, Horus of the Horizon, telling a fantastic tale.
Hunting lions and flocks, and riding in his chariot, his horses faster than the wind. The hour came to give rest to his followers at the limbs of Horemheb. Prince Thutmosis came, passing by at the time of midday, and he sat down in the shadow of the great god. Sleep seized him, asleep at the time when the sun was at its zenith. And he found the majesty of the noble god speaking with his own mouth, like the words of a father for his son, saying, "Look at me, see me, my son Thutmosis. I am your father, Horemheb, born of Atur, and I shall give you kingship on earth in front of all the living ones. You shall wear the white and red crowns upon the throne of Geb. The earth shall be yours, in its length and width. Everything that the eye of the Lord of all illuminates. The food of the two lands shall be yours, as well as the great tributes of every foreign land. Your lifetime will be a time great in years. My face is yours, my heart is yours, as you are a protector to me. For my current condition is like one that is in need. All my limbs, as if they were dismembered, as the sands of the desert upon which I lie have reached me. So run to me, to have that done which I desire. Know that you are my son and my protector. Come forth, and I shall be with you. I shall be your leader."
Unfortunately, the stele is damaged, and the story begins to break off. The final legible lines state,
"The king's son awoke hearing this. He understood the words of the god, and he put them in his heart. They shall protect the offerings to the god, which we bring for him, oxen, fruit, and all vegetables. And we shall give praise to the ancestors. Khafra's image, seen by Atur, Horemheb."
This last line gives us a strong indication
that the Sphinx was created in Khafra's image. Preceding Thutmose IV, Amenhotep II completed work on a new temple built to the side of the Sphinx. One of the largest tombs in the quarry belongs to the eldest son of Menkaure, yet this son must have died young, as he never succeeded his father. Khuera became a scribe and secretary of his father. His tomb is created as a large colonnaded hall. When the tomb was entered in 1934, a seated statue of Khuera as a scribe was discovered. Inside the tomb is the prince shown with his mother, Queen Khaemwaset II, where he is shown holding a royal hoopoe bird. There are an estimated 500 burials here, with more still to be discovered. Nefertiti, the iconic female face of ancient Egypt, living 3,500 years ago during an upheaval of ancient life, caused in part by her husband, Pharaoh Akhenaten. The identity of this woman has been cloaked in mystery since her rediscovery in the ruins of the city that she and her husband founded, Ankhesenamun, now called Amarna. Nefertiti is now believed to have been a fully fledged pharaoh, king to the throne after the uncertain death of Akhenaten. Yet, she was more than a queen, more than a ruler. Nefertiti was a mother. We know of 6 children born between Akhenaten and Nefertiti. It was these children that caused much controversy between Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and a secondary wife, Tiye. Tiye gave birth to the only male heir, now the world's most famous Tutankhamun. Nefertiti, on the other hand, had a string of female children. But who were these daughters of Nefertiti, and why do we not hear more about them? Where are their tombs and their treasures? Why did they die young, marry their father and brother? And what can we learn about their lives under their sheltered upbringing in the palaces of Akhetaten, closed off from the rest of the world? Did they agree with their parents' new religion? In 1912, German archaeologists were excavating at the desolate city of Amarna, where they discovered many intriguing objects from Nefertiti's life, stylized yet lifelike images of the queen, pharaoh, children, and other royal family members, most notably the bust of Nefertiti. Because the times were different in the early 1900s, many of these artifacts found at Amarna have been removed from Egypt and scattered far and wide across the world.
I've come here to the Neues Museum in Berlin, where they have the biggest collection of Amarna art in the world. And I'm finally going to come face to face with the children of Nefertiti to find out who they really were.
These are the daughters of Nefertiti and the sisters of Tutankhamun. Around 1352 BC, Amenhotep III was ruling Egypt. Though at quite an extended age, he probably had a co-regent, a formidable woman who had assisted Amenhotep III for many decades. In fact, many foreigners preferred to converse with this queen rather than the pharaoh. It was in one of these foreign letters from a king of the Hittites that he congratulated the queen on the birth of her grandchild, Meketaten. This grandmother and queen was none other than Queen Tiye. Amenhotep and Tiye had several children, including a young prince, the future pharaoh Akhenaten. They lived in Thebes, on the west bank in an opulent palace called Malkata. The son of Tiye and Amenhotep III was named Amenhotep IV. However, shortly after his father's death, he changed his name from Amenhotep IV to Akhenaten. Amenhotep IV had married a young girl from a noble family, Nefertiti. Ancient textual evidence possibly names her father as a courtier of Amenhotep III and the brother of Queen Tiye. His name was Ai. Toward the end of Amenhotep III's life, Akhenaten and Nefertiti had their first child together. They named her Meketaten. Her name means the one who makes the sun god Aten happy. By naming their daughter this, it was a foreshadowing of what religious changes were afoot. Meketaten would have known her grandfather Amenhotep III before he died, as she is shown at Karnak Temple with Nefertiti. Meketaten's father, Amenhotep IV, became pharaoh when her grandfather died. They only continued to live in Thebes for the next 4 years. Her father began to show less interest in the plethora of Egyptian gods, in particular Amun, to whom Karnak Temple was home. Her father showed more favor in one god only, named Aten, the life-giving sun disk. He founded a new capital miles north of Thebes and named it Akhetaten, meaning the horizon of the Aten. He even went as far as to remove his previous name, which mentioned the god Amun, and changed it to Akhenaten, meaning the servant of Aten. It would be in this new city that Meketaten was given her highest ranking positions. According to many, a northern palace at Akhetaten was built for a secondary wife of Akhenaten, whose name was later replaced with the name of Meketaten. Meketaten is depicted many times in the new city, where she is venerating the god Aten, along with her father Akhenaten and mother Nefertiti. A very close relationship is visible between Meketaten and Akhenaten during her younger years. On one scene, Akhenaten is shown gifting a golden earring to Meketaten. It is known that Akhenaten and Nefertiti had 6 children together, and only daughters. The secondary wife of Akhenaten, Kiya, gave birth to the male heir Tutankhamun, then called Tutankhaten. This would have caused some friction between Nefertiti and Kiya. Very soon after the birth of Tut, Kiya disappears. Did she die of a plague that tormented the new city? Or was she removed by Nefertiti? Some believe that Meketaten, the half-sister of Tut, became his adoptive mother and raised him in the northern palace, which was formerly inhabited by Kiya. Although the wet nurse of Tut was named Maya, some believe that Maya and Meketaten are one and the same, but this theory holds little factual evidence, even though many artifacts belonging to Meketaten were found in the tomb of Tutankhamun, from a clothing chest to musical clappers containing the names of Meketaten and their grandmother, Queen Tiye. Life in Akhenaten's new city was not the utopia that he had dreamed of. Plague swept through the town, foreign allies turned their backs, and the population were not as welcoming of the idea of only one main god as he had hoped. The final years of Amarna were very muddy, and much is still unknown. Nefertiti had become a co-regent with Akhenaten, but she appears to disappear in her older age. Perhaps she changed her name to the royal name of Nefernuaten. Out of the blue, a new co-regent arrives on the scene, around this time, named Smenkhara. Some even go as far as to suggest a bisexual relationship between Akhenaten and Smenkhara. Smenkhara became a short-lived pharaoh when Akhenaten died. High in the hills of Amarna, at the nobles' tombs, in one tomb of Meri Ra, Smenkhara is shown giving tribute to Meri Ra, along with Meketaten. In this tomb, we have a clear sign showing that Meketaten became great royal wife of Smenkhara. It is even possible that before things began to fall apart, that there were 4 rulers of Egypt at the same time: Akhenaten, Nefertiti, Smenkhara, and Meketaten. It is possible that she had given birth to 2 children, one sharing the same name as her mother, Meketaten. A tomb for Meketaten has never been found. A boundary stela of her father mentions that she shall be laid to rest in the family tomb in the eastern mountains, but no sign of Meketaten being buried there was ever found. We have no idea what the final fate of Meketaten was. A new female ruler appears, and the 2 former rulers, Smenkhara and Meketaten, disappear. Did they die from the plague that ravaged the city? Were they killed to make way for the abandonment of Amarna and a new young pharaoh who became Tutankhamun? Did they give up the throne and move back to Thebes with the entire population of Amarna? Or were they simply expelled and left in shame? One may never know. The second daughter of Nefertiti is named Meketaten, meaning protected by the Aten. Unsurprisingly, very little is known about Meketaten. She first appears in Thebes at Karnak, in a temple built by her father Akhenaten, just 3 years before the family moved to the new capital city. She is then mentioned in year 4 and 5 of Akhenaten on a boundary stela of Amarna. Therefore, we can deduce that she was around 7 years old at this time. This royal family are extremely close, and scenes show them in loving moments. Meketaten appears on the lap of Nefertiti in one scene, holding hands with her mother, while 2 of her other sisters also join in. Whereas Meketaten seems close with Nefertiti, her elder sister Meketaten appears closer with Akhenaten on the same scene. In the tomb of her grandfather, from Nefertiti's side, she is shown holding a tray of offerings towards Ai. When she was around 15 years old, she appears again in several Amarnan tombs, including the tomb of Hoi and Meri Ra. It is suggested that she married her father Akhenaten and became pregnant, but things seemed to end here for Meketaten. She died in year 14 of Akhenaten's reign.
which means she was around 17 years old. She was buried in a royal tomb at Amarna. Unlike the old view on death and rebirth in the next life, where you needed to appease several gods, Akhenaten believed you simply arrived in heaven and rose like the Aten sun from your devotion in this life. In the tomb of Meketaten, the sad reality of her death comes to light. Her entire family is shown grieving for her. In a moment of extreme sadness, she is shown deceased under a canopy. The significance of her under the canopy is heartbreaking. The canopy at this time symbolized childbirth. What we understand from this scene is that she tragically died during childbirth, a time that was most feared by many Egyptians. Although the tomb is very badly damaged, another scene shows Akhenaten and Nefertiti looking over the dead daughter, while Akhenaten holds Nefertiti by the arm. Outside of the room, we can see a woman holding a newborn child being covered with a royal fan. Many believe that this is the child that Meketaten gave birth to. Very few objects from Meketaten remain, yet one scribal palette can be marveled at, showing the name of Nefertiti and her daughter, Meketaten. A princess, a queen, a woman of the utmost terrible circumstances, the middle child of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. She is believed to have been born in Thebes very shortly before the royal family moved to the new city of Akhetaten, now Amarna. She was given the birth name of Ankhesenamun, which she later changed to Ankhesenamun when she veered away from her father's religion. In her early life, along with her two elder sisters, she became one of the principal priestesses of the Aten, and is often shown along with her two sisters. Akhenaten made it that the public had to worship the family, and in turn, the royals and mainly the pharaoh would pass on your prayers to the god Aten. It is suggested that she was married to her own father, a practice at the time which was not unusual. She may have even given birth to an inbred child sharing the same name as herself. Yet the child died from the plague that wiped out half of the population of Amarna. When her father died, during the short period of rule under Smenkhara and Nefernuaten, Ankhesenamun was married to her slightly younger brother, Tutankhaten. Again, not strange practice at the time, as they believed that inbreeding would keep the family lines stronger, as well as the religious aspect where the Amarnan royals were divine in their own way. They could not marry out of the divine lineage. Ankhesenamun and Tutankhaten appeared to be very close. They are seemingly trained to be rulers by Nefertiti herself, if the theory is true that Nefertiti lived on past Akhenaten. They are also cared for by Nefertiti's father, Ai. After a few short years, Tutankhaten was crowned as pharaoh when he was 9 years old, and Ankhesenamun was made the great royal wife, also known as Queen. Only 2 years into his rule, Tutankhaten and Ankhesenamun abandoned their father's city and moved back to Thebes and reinstated Amun as the chief god of Egypt. To affirm that they were distanced from Aten now,
They changed the epithets of their names, mentioning Aten, to now mention Amun, becoming Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamun. The close brother and sister were then stamping their mark in Thebes, being shown on statues and reliefs together in the two main temples of Thebes, Luxor Temple and Karnak. Ankhesenamun is often shown in loving scenes with her brother, some engraved in gold, where she is seen hunting geese with Tutankhamun, others where he pours out wine for his sister queen. There is a loving scene on a wooden chest, which is aptly known as their wedding scene. A young Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamun are seen presenting each other with the lotus in a lush garden. Yet, the most famous of all of these scenes of the couple is on the throne of Tut, where Ankhesenamun is leaning forward, rubbing oils from a bowl onto her brother husband. We know that the couple tried to conceive an heir at least twice, yet these children suffered the same fate as her first child. Two mummified children from Tut and Ankhesenamun were found in Tut's tomb. Tutankhamun died around the age of 19 after a 9-year reign. Having no children, this left Ankhesenamun in a predicament. Her grandfather Ai, Nefertiti's father, wanted to become the next pharaoh, yet we have evidence that Ankhesenamun did not want this. Here at the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, they have some really amazing examples of trade relations between Hittites and Egyptians. The ancient Egyptians had very good trade routes to the north, including people of the Hittites, Amurru, and Assyria. And they used to send letters between each other in the international communication language, which was written in cuneiform, sort of looks like little bird scratchings. And one of the most famous letters is that of Queen Nefertari, that she used to send letters to the Queen Pudahipa up in the north, and they had a very good rapport between themselves. But before Nefertari of Ramses II, Amenhotep III and Queen Tiye used to send letters up there. Queen Tiye was actually very instrumental in causing a good relationship between the two countries. However, as we go on, from Tel el Amarna we have letters from Nefertiti and Akhenaten to the Hittites in the north, and this is where we see things start to crumble. During the time of Tutankhamun, he had very good trade relations at that time with the Hittites to the north, so much so that even Ankhesenamun wrote to the Hittites when Tut died and asked for one of their sons to be sent because she did not want to marry Ai, her possible grandfather, who was an old man. And some artifacts have been found, not in Egypt, out of Egypt, showing Tut and Ankhesenamun. And on the other side, the Assyrian lion goddess who is connected to Sekhmet. Shortly after her husband died and before Ai became king, she wrote a letter to the Hittites stating that she did not wish to marry the courtier and that the king of the Hittites should send one of his many sons for her to marry, and he shall become the pharaoh. Unfortunately, it appears that Ai was aware of this, and once the Hittite prince arrived in Egypt, he was executed. Ankhesenamun married Ai, whose first wife was dead already. A small ring showing the joint names of Ai and Ankhesenamun remains to tell this tale. Although Ai was in his late 70s and only ruled for a short time, during this short time, the then 20-something-year-old Ankhesenamun disappears from all records. Her fate is not known. The tomb of Ai in Thebes is thought to be the original burial place of Tut. However, Ai swapped the tombs, claiming the larger for himself. The decorations are very similar, and a scene in the tomb could be a final image of Ankhesenamun. Ai was an old man, yet on the wall there is a young man with the bodily features of Tutankhamun, and next to him is his great royal wife, wearing the feathers of Amun. This scene would appear to be Tut and Ankhesenamun, yet their faces and names have been hacked out. This scene of the couple, showing them hunting geese, a symbolic image that was repeated several times by Tutankhamun and the unfortunate Ankhesenamun. Nefertiti's fourth daughter shares the same name as her mother. She is known as Nefernuaten Tashrean, or the beauty of the Aten the younger. Nefernuaten Tashrean is thought to have been born around year 9 of Akhenaten's rule. She does not appear in many scenes with the family, apart from one where she is shown as a young toddler sitting on a pillow, playing with her younger baby sister. The entire Amarna family are shown on this fresco from the main palace. However, the only surviving intact scene is that of Nefernuaten Tashrean. Since the other's feet are still visible on the fresco, artists have been able to reconstruct the scene to allow us to imagine how it initially looked. She does, however, make 2 brief appearances as a young princess in a noble's tomb at Amarna, where she is shown with her other sisters. She does not appear to have a high role in the family when it came to official duties, which is why she could possibly have only been shown in nobles' tombs. Nefernuaten Tashrean was present at the death of her older sister, Meketaten, as she is included in the lineup of princesses mourning their sister's passing. This scene took place before the next 2 younger sisters were born, as they are not present on the scene. Many are uncertain of the ultimate fate of this princess. She may have been the Amarnan princess shown on several scenes without titles, as many believe she died before Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamun took the throne. Neferure is either the possible twin sister of Nefernuaten Tashrean, or she may have been born very soon after Nefernuaten Tashrean. The thought behind them being twins is that they are both shown at what looks to be the same age on a palace fresco. Both princesses are shown bold, with their defined eyeliner, as well as being adorned in fine blue lapis and gold jewelry. Nefernuaten Tashrean on the right, looking back at her sister, holding her under the chin, a loving image of Neferure and her sister. Neferure does not appear on many scenes with the royals. In the tomb of Meri Ra, she is shown with her sisters giving offerings to the overseer. Neferure is depicted holding a baby gazelle and a single lotus flower, while she still has her side lock, the sign of royal youth. The plague that swept through Amarna took many victims, including the other royals. One of the youngest victims to have befallen this fate was Neferure. The scene showing the death of Meketaten has the royal princesses present, all except one, Neferure. It is likely that she is not shown in mourning because she, like her elder sister, had died.
we have a small rose quartzite statue of Akhenaten, but this is the artist's draft. He's drawn onto the stone what he wants to create. This is unfinished, and this is great because it allows us to get an insight into how Akhenaten's artists created their art.
Towards the end of the Amarna period, much of the art was left unfinished. Like these two draft statues of two young Amarnan princesses, one clutching at a sistrum and a lotus. These two statues lead us closer to the idea that Nefernuat and Tashrean and Neferure were twins. The final glimmer of the life of the young princess was found in the tomb of her half-brother, Tutankhamun. Among the thousands of pieces discovered was a very small wooden box showing Tut's sister, Neferure, seated as a young child with her finger pressed to her mouth, a traditional pose for infants in the art of the Egyptians. Setepenra, the youngest and the last daughter of Nefertiti, whose name translates to chosen of the sun god Ra. Oddly, her name deviates from Aten slightly, yet still mentioning a solar deity. Could this have been a precursor to the dramatic reshift of religion and power in the country in the years to come? She was the last-born child to Akhenaten and Nefertiti, who appeared to have been trying to conceive a male heir. Born in year 11 of Akhenaten's rule, Setepenra makes her final appearance while receiving foreign tributes with her parents and her sisters. She is the very last daughter shown on a carving in the tomb of Merira. This princess tragically died at the age of 6, before the death of Meketaten, as she appears nowhere on these key family moments. There are hundreds of statues, inlays, and ostraca showing the princesses of the Aten, and many of these show a very young princess. Could this be the local artist's attempt for the short-lived princess Setepenra, a final recognition in mourning? We may never know, as so many of these pieces were damaged when the city was abandoned and remain unidentifiable. When we look at the busts and art from Amarna, we of course notice how strangely these people are depicted. That was Akhenaten's own art style. But let us look beyond that and look at the faces of these young princesses. Though we may not know who is being depicted all the time, let us remember the human side of these young women. Nefertiti is remembered through the image of her beauty, but like so many who wish to be remembered through their children, the outcome would have been the latter, for one of the most mysterious and memorable queens to have ever walked on the sands of Egypt.
After seeing the Amarna heads close up for myself, I feel like I've discovered Nefertiti's family. We might not know a lot about them, and there might still be so much mystery, but to me, I hope that I've brought them back to life for you.
Akhenaten, this strange-looking man, was born at the Palace of Melkata on the west bank of Luxor, or Wasset as it was known then. His father was one of ancient Egypt's most prolific and successful rulers to have ever lived, a pharaoh whose intellect saw Egypt reach one of its most stable periods ever, Amenemhat III. His mother was the wife of Amenemhat III, a woman whose strength and determination leaves us in awe and filled with wonder, Queen Tiye. It is not agreed upon exactly when Akhenaten was born. We can only base this on when his first daughter was born and when his eldest brother had died. I suggest the year 1363 BC. However, when Akhenaten was born, his birth name was originally Amenhotep, like that of his father. Akhenaten was born rather late in his father's reign and was not shown in scenes with the royal family. Some suggest that because he looked different, he was not included. However, around this time, it was not common to see any male royal prince with the family, usually just the princesses, so that can be dismissed. The palace where Akhenaten lived was not called Malkata in the past, but rather Bintanath, which means place of the dazzling Aten. Amenhotep III permanently moved to Bintanath around year 29 of his reign, roughly the same time Akhenaten was born. On one of the boundary stela, Akhenaten now professes that he shall never leave the boundaries of Akhetaten. Akhenaten had two palaces at Amarna. The largest is where he and Nefertiti would live. The second and smaller palace was created for Akhenaten's secondary wife, Tiye. The smaller northern palace was quite a distance from the main palace. Clearly, Akhenaten wanted to keep the two families separated. Probably Nefertiti's insistence. Akhenaten and the other royals would travel between the palaces and the temple by chariot. Once at the temple, they would not walk on any ground that was not part of the temple. Even though the soil of Akhenaten was sacred, the king, now being a god, could not touch anything that would make him impure. This would have been rarely difficult at the palace with their servants. Floors of the palace show a worn-down path on one area, the area where only the servants were allowed to walk. Soon, though, even Nefertiti would have to fade under Akhenaten's light.
You were so excited. I'm shaking.
We know that his daughter, Meketaten, was buried in the tomb in her chamber.
This is the burial chamber of Meketaten.
Meketaten, yes.
Here's the princess. Here she is.
Here we've got the altar.
And Nefertiti's cartouche. Look there.
Oh gosh, yes it is.
Yeah. Neferu, Aten. Wow. And obviously Akhenaten here.
It's very damaged, isn't it, this Akhenaten? But you can still make it. That is Akhenaten. And look, his cartouche.
It's scooped out.
Removed, yeah.
Interesting, Nefertiti is still here and he's gone.
Yeah. Very interesting.
But just look at the flow on the dress.
And the hands still visible.
Nefertiti here.
That's definitely Nefertiti.
Yeah. I mean, lights again.
Oh,
forget it. Look at her, how beautiful she is with the dress. Who would this be? Here's her name.
Yes. So we've got Ankhesenamun.
Ankhesenamun. Ankhesenamun.
Yes.
This is amazing. Did you ever think we would get in here?
I didn't. Still shaking.
Yeah. Wow. And then, is that Meketaten behind?
Can I see that?
You can see that. Yeah, Meketaten.
Meketaten.
Yeah. Born of the queen's body. King's body.
Yeah.
Are these official mourners? I think so.
Yes. And if you have a look here, you can see the morning scene here. She's literally lifting the sand. And you have a look here, putting the sand over. This is a great depiction of the morning scene.
This is the death of Meketaten. Meketaten here.
He's in mourning.
Nefertiti is holding her hand.
Oh, it's a very touching scene.
Very much mourning for the child.
Yeah.
There's his hand raised, you know, the mourning pose. It's just incredible to see that. It's damaged now, but when the tomb was first entered, they could see Meketaten underneath the canopy. Oh. Lights on, lights off. Originally, she was under that canopy here with the same scene of them mourning. Look how they're holding hands.
And is that baby Tut there?
Yes. This is baby Tut with Meketaten. Wow. Look at her. Look at baby Tut. Wow.
So
that is incredible.
That is baby Tut.
You can see the bed with the body of there. You can see that with Meketaten. The walls are so damaged.
It's such a shame.
Yeah. I mean, the carvings are not great, but the deliberate damage has made it even worse.
It has, yeah. I think, at the end they were so despised that everything was destroyed. But even though that we've got so little, you still feel emotional.
Yeah, we can see the emotions. I mean, this is a human emotion. They are crying for a daughter that has died. Look how she's got her hand out holding him.
Yeah, it's very touching.
But also what I can tell is here, Nefertiti is the stronger personality.
For sure.
For sure. If she's supporting the king and he's mourning so much.
Yeah.
Just to think, these people that we've been hearing about for so long, we see them here. They're real people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a totally different feeling being here compared to reading about
When
it.
you're reading about it, you don't understand the scope and the emotion that you feel when you're actually here. It's so different.
Yeah. Come to Egypt and experience it, it's better. Go to the places.
Exactly. Exactly. Because even when we were driving here, it's so vast.
It's miles from the Nile.
Yeah.
Smenkhara is shown as Pharaoh, who is now married to the king's eldest daughter, Meketaten, though Smenkhara would only rule for 1 year independently. Alexander III was born as a prince of Macedonia in July 356 BC in the Greek Macedonian state of Pella. His mother was named Olympia, and his father was King Philip II. Alexander grew up being well educated by some of ancient Greece's most notable men. Apart from being very intelligent, ancient sources write that Alexander had a great love of reading and learning about many different subjects. The young prince was very determined and hard-working. At his young age, he didn't care much for frivolity.
I think three people had a huge influence on Alexander: Aristotle, his father Philip, and his mother. In fact, I feel the influence of Aristotle, the most learned and celebrated philosopher of his time, cannot be underestimated. When he was appointed the tutor of the young prince, he was given the task of educating the future king. Aristotle, a polymath, taught Alexander an array of subjects, including philosophy, ethics, science, and politics. It was an education aimed at not just creating a knowledgeable ruler, but also a wise one. It's also interesting and wonderful, actually, that he instilled in Alexander a curiosity about the natural world. This is evident by Alexander's support for scientific research during his campaigns, including the cataloguing of new plant and animal species, and also the founding of the city of Alexandria, which later under the Ptolemies would house the famous library and also would become the cultural hub of learning and research.
He was also trained as a soldier from a very young age. Although much of his life would have been comfortable being a prince, he and his family did face many challenges, particularly from the Persians, who were rapidly expanding their empire and making advances towards Greece and its province of Macedon. Philip had made alliances with many of the Persian opponents. By 337 BC, he had given refuge to several Persian noblemen. Alexander was in the court of his father by this time, as he was 20 years old. He heard firsthand many of the issues which would arise from the Persians. He valued these men's valor. King Philip then went into Asia Minor to liberate Greek settlements from the Persians. All seemed to be going well, as Philip and his 10,000 men strong army were victorious. However, when Philip returned to Macedonia, everything was about to change for Philip. In 336 BC, Philip married another noble woman named Cleopatra. Olympia was furious at this move from her husband king. This obviously caused tensions in the family, as Olympia and her son Alexander fled into exile in Epirus, where Olympia's brother was king. Historians are divided on what happened next, but the theory I like to believe goes as follows. A personal guard of the King Philip was working with Olympia, who wanted her son to become king of Macedon. Alexander returned to Macedonia without his mother, and then it happened. King Philip was assassinated by his guard. Olympia returned home on the night of this incident. Many believe that Olympia was behind Philip's assassination. Immediately, while Philip's body was still warm, the nobles and army proclaimed Alexander as the new king. He was 20 years old. This was the moment that Alexander would start his journey on becoming one of history's most notable figures, creating one of the biggest empires the world had ever seen. We do not know the exact cause of his death, other than it being mentioned that he had a fever. His death would now cause a fierce power battle between Alexander's court as to who would rule the empire. it seems to have been divided up. The half-brother of Alexander the Great would become the next crowned pharaoh of Egypt, Philip III. Philip proved to be a very weak king of Egypt and Macedon, and served as more of a puppet controlled by more powerful people. Philip III wanted to emulate Alexander the Great. He depicted himself at Karnak Temple. On the outside of Amun's inner shrine are many images of Pharaoh Philip. He is shown being crowned by Amun. And other scenes show Alexander's half-brother giving offerings to the gods.
Here he is, Philip II. We can see his name up there. P, which is the box, L-I-P, Philip.
He was trying to show to the Egyptian people that he was worthy of this title, the same way Alexander was, being seen directly with the gods in the most important temple in all of Egypt. A few months after Philip III was named as pharaoh in 322 BC, Roxanne, one of the wives of Alexander, gave birth to a son named Alexander IV. This young son of Alexander was then also named as Pharaoh of Egypt and King of Macedon, therefore co-ruling with Philip III. But Alexander IV was only an infant. He was used just as much as Philip was by other people to make their claims of the empire.
In 55 BC, with assistance from Rome, Ptolemy returned to retake Egypt. He killed his daughter Amenemhat IV and was recrowned as pharaoh. 2 years later, he named his next daughter as co-regent, Cleopatra VII. A year after that, Ptolemy died.
Cleopatra was not an Egyptian. Cleopatra was a Ptolemaic lady. She was the last ruler of this dynasty. We know that the Greek people lived in Egypt for 300 years, and their rule ended on 30 BC. And Cleopatra was the last queen. Cleopatra's father was Ptolemaic number 12. And he, when he died, he wrote in his will that Cleopatra and her brother, Ptolemaic number 13, should be ruling Egypt.
When Cleopatra became co-regent with her brother, Ptolemy XIII, she would have been around 18 years old, and her brother was only 10. She took up the role as dominant ruler, since her brother was way too young to make decisions. We have seen this happen 1,400 years before, during the 18th dynasty, where Hatshepsut took up the role of pharaoh, since her stepson, Thutmose, was too young to rule. This was nothing uncommon in Egyptian history. Do you think she had an easy upbringing living with the Ptolemies?
No, she did not. I mean, she witnessed her own sister being murdered by her own father. So, no.
After her father's death, Cleopatra took over an unstable country. She established her own political agenda and strengthened Egypt's economy, producing a wealthy kingdom. Cleopatra was an acute political leader, as well as being a charismatic, brave, and capable ruler for 20 years.
It seems these types of happenings angered Cleopatra's brother and his advisors, and only after 1 year of co-rulership, Cleopatra is tumultuously chased out of Egypt and fled to Syria. Ptolemy XIII then became a full pharaoh at the age of 12. Cleopatra did manage to send her son Caesarion away down south to Nubia en route to Ethiopia. While traveling, his mother died. Then Caesarion legally became pharaoh, but only for around 18 days before he was captured by Octavian's men and executed on the Romans' orders. Cleopatra's 3 remaining children were eventually taken to Rome. They were paraded as prisoners. Her 2 sons would disappear, and her daughter was married off to an ally of Rome in Mauritania. She was queen of that land for quite some time, and requested many of her mother's scribes and scholars be sent to her. She had a son named Ptolemy, who went on to rule Mauritania for a short time before being executed by Caligula in 40 AD, and thus completely ending the Ptolemaic bloodline.
Over 3,800 years ago, Egypt was in crisis. The current pharaoh has died. He has not left any male heirs to follow. What was to happen? Foreigners to the north had already started arriving in Egypt, and the land had started to become divided, with independent rulers emerging all over the land. The last glimmer of hope would come from a princess, a daughter of the 12th dynasty pharaoh, Amenemhat III. This woman was the only legitimate heir left to rule. Her name was Sobek Neferu. In an extraordinary break from tradition, she was to set a precedent for all female rulers to come, such as Hatshepsut, the 18th dynasty female pharaoh. For years now, people have credited the incomparable Hatshepsut with being the first female pharaoh. However, this is incorrect. Yes, there were female rulers, from Merenith from the 1st dynasty to Khaemwaset from the 4th dynasty. However, Sobek Neferu was to be the first to use the title of the daughter of the sun god Ra. Her rule saw many trials and tribulations, and would see the end of the Middle Kingdom of Egypt, and the end of the Pyramid Age.
She is the first woman who rules as king.
Staunchly retaining her femininity.
She changed the religious belief. She became a pharaoh.
Her name means the beautiful one of the crocodile god Sobek. What evidence is there about her connection to these fierce creatures? We know she had temples built in Fayum with mysterious underground chambers.
Sobek is a crocodile god.
Every opportunity they get, they will try to kill you.
But what do we rarely know about the Queen's life? Throughout the years, I have investigated many Egyptian queens and their illustrious lives. Now, join me, Curtis Ryan Woodside, in this documentary, years in the making, to finally learn more about Sobek Neferu. I have traveled around the world to gather up the crumbs of clues that have been left behind, not only from her life, but also her death.
This is the homework for the scribes.
Lots of unanswered questions.
We're gonna try and answer them.
Who was Sobek Neferu? I come face to face with the only known statue of the queen left, and learn more about not only herself, but her family, her religion, her legacy, the downfall of her dynasty, and her death. Come with me as I investigate the Crocodile Princess.
Sobek Neferu, the crocodile princess, shown wearing a nemes. We can see here she's seated on the throne of a king. Clearly, she's wearing a female dress with breasts. Sobek Neferu was a female pharaoh in her own right, possibly the first female pharaoh that we actually can confirm before Hatshepsut. But this bust has disappeared from history. So, where is this bust? I've tracked it down, so come with me to go see it.
I've come to Berlin to see something that's connected to this animal right here and an Egyptian queen. It's a piece that's been missing that I'm so excited to see, so let's go. I'm hoping here in downtown West Berlin
to get up close and personal with the only remaining piece of the crocodile princess. This is the Gipsvormerij, which has been around for about 200 years, and they have some of the most faithful casts of ancient Egyptian pieces, as well as other masterpieces, such as their beautiful replica of Nefertiti. But today, they have something special for me to see that's not actually on display. Here she is. I'm so excited. I'm like shaking. I know it's only a replica, but this is Queen Sobek Neferu, Pharaoh Sobek Neferu. The reason I'm so excited to see her is because this little bust, there's the full version of this bust was on display in the Altes Egyptian Museum here in Berlin. But when it was bombed in World War II, this statue was destroyed. And this is the only known cast, an exact cast of the statue of the crocodile princess, Sobek Neferu. She's so beautiful. And you can see she's wearing this really interesting sort of nemes. It's pleated. You can tell it's not a wig because the pleats are going across. She's wearing a nemes headdress. And at the top, there's a little hole, a little slit, where the uraeus, the cobra, would have been entered into. Isn't she just a masterpiece? And she very much resembles her father.
Unlike other Egyptian female rulers, Sobek Neferu kept her femininity and displayed herself as a woman not conforming to the male pharaoh standards.
Sobek Neferu is an important figure in ancient Egyptian history because she is the first woman who rules as king. Royal women before her had wielded tremendous amounts of authority. When Pepi II at the end of the 6th dynasty came to the throne at about the age of 6, we know that his mother was heavily involved in the day-to-day ruling of the ancient Egyptian government. Queens and princesses continued to be significant in the 12th dynasty, but it was Sobek Neferu who took things a step further and ruled at the pinnacle of the ancient Egyptian state. She became the guarantor of Ma'at, the mediator between heaven and earth. By tying on a kilt over her dress, taking on that form of royal regalia, she was able to perform rituals in the same way as a male king.
For us to learn about Sobek Neferu, we must go back to the start of the 12th dynasty to understand the dynamics at work within Egypt. Amenemhat I, the son of an army general, he succeeded to the throne as the first pharaoh of the 12th dynasty, just shortly after Egypt had been reunified. Amenemhat I, he was to have a long line of prosperous successors. Like his son, Sesostris I, he pushed Egypt's borders wider to the north and south, invading Nubia twice and Canaan on occasion. It's from Sesostris I that we get the tale of Sinuhe. The scribe Sinuhe wrote that Sesostris I had to be rushed back to Egypt during an invasion in Libya after his father, Amenemhat I, had been assassinated. Strong, militaristic rulers would follow Sesostris I, such as Amenemhat II and Sesostris II, leading up to the greatest ruler of the 12th dynasty, Sesostris III. This ruthless warrior is often shown with a displeased look on his face. Probably considered the most powerful pharaoh of the 12th dynasty, Sesostris III expanded Egypt's empire and kept their enemies at bay. Building forts up and down the land, he maintained Egypt's control in Nubia, setting the boundaries and leading the way for his son, Amenemhat III. Amenemhat III shared a co-regency with his father, Sesostris III, for near on 20 years. When his father died, he became full pharaoh. Because of his father's exceptional military campaigns, Amenemhat inherited a peaceful Egypt. His reign would see a period of peace and stability for many years.
Amenemhat III, the father of Sobek Neferu, the father of the first ever recorded female pharaoh. And he's so beautiful. He's done in this 12th dynasty style. And you can see he's got those frown lines, pretty similar to Sesostris III. This statue has been changed many times over its lifetime, probably created first by Sesostris, then adapted to Amenemhat III. And even on the side, we have the names of Ramses II and his son, the 13th son, Merenptah.
Only one military battle is attested to this king. In the 9th year of his reign, he went down into Nubia and conquered Semna after a revolt from a small population down there. But this is only mentioned on a crude rock inscription. However, his reign appears to be one of prosperity. Amenemhat then focused his attention toward improving agricultural infrastructure and building projects. He started to turn towards the Fayum oasis. He constructed a temple out in the desert, now named Medinet Madi. It was here that he housed a select group of women whose role was to pleasure the pharaoh. They were the harem of the king, specially selected women. Sometimes the role was handed down from mother to daughter. They lived out in Fayum. These women were always unique and beautiful. They were treated well by the pharaoh, who expected certain entertainment back as gratitude. Amenemhat is well documented for his visits to the harem in Fayum. However, Amenemhat did have 3 principal wives. It would have to be a child from one of these 3 queens who would be chosen to be the successor. Children from the harem were more than often not officially listed. Amenemhat had 6 official listed children. Amenemhat is of course the father of Sobek Neferu, and she is written as one of the officially recognized children of the pharaoh. We do not know the name of Sobek Neferu's mother, but this is not uncommon. The 3rd wife's identity of Amenemhat is also not known. She could be the mother of Sobek Neferu. At the time, the world that Sobek Neferu grew up in is one of abundance and opulence. The country was thriving. The Nile's flood was stable, resulting in fertile crops. Egypt was almost like a paradise. Sobek-Neferu's father, had led several expeditions to the land of Punt, bringing back many sought-after items. Gemstones were being mined throughout the land and beyond. People all around were living pretty stable and flourishing lives. Many of the furniture pieces from this period are some of the finest of all antiquity. Imagine Sobek-Neferu probably used items like this, or even better, in her everyday life. The gold mines were also overflowing. Some of the finest jewelry is from the 12th dynasty, delicately crafted with superb details, inlaid with colorful stones. Many show charms attached of the gods. This pectoral necklace belonged to Amenemhat III, gifted to one of his sisters and buried with her. We can see the king smiting enemies, mirrored perfectly. On another, Pharaoh Amenemhat appears as a sphinx, capturing his foe. Many of these items belonged to Amenemhat and his family. This gold and beaded necklace was found in the tomb of Neferuptah, the daughter of Amenemhat and the eldest sister of Sobek-Neferu. In Amenemhat III's 45-year-long reign, he doesn't appear to have many legitimate sons, and it was Neferuptah who was being trained to become the next pharaoh, not Sobek-Neferu. However, Neferuptah had an untimely death, leaving a slight problem in the line of succession. Towards the end of Amenemhat III's reign, he installs a co-regent, his only listed son, Amenemhat IV. Although it does appear that Amenemhat IV's mother may have been a woman from the harem, her name was Hetepi. She is only named as Amenemhat IV's mother and never as the wife of the previous pharaoh at the temple in Fayum. Amenemhat IV may not have been 100% legitimate, thus he married his half-sister, Sobek-Neferu. This interfamilial marriage was not something strange to the ancient Egyptians.
Sobek-Neferu, how much do we know about?
We know very little about her.
Yeah.
We know just some evidence that she ruled. That's what we know. She changed the religious belief. She became a pharaoh, and that's why her monuments were completely destroyed.
Yeah.
Women held much power, and a woman coming from a pure bloodline could somehow add value to a male ruler. Women were often brought right to the forefront in times of great crisis. When his father died, Amenemhat IV became full pharaoh. He went on to rule for around 9 years. He may have had 2 sons from another wife. However, when he died, neither of these sons were recognized as rightful successors to the throne. It would be Sobek-Neferu who became a female pharaoh. Sobek-Neferu's rise to the throne was not without its many issues. For the ancients, the pharaoh needed to be a male for a few simple reasons. Pharaoh was the earthly manifestation of the god Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris. The male pharaoh also had a duty in reproductive roles. Pharaohs were also referred to as the strong bull of his mother Hathor, such as seen on the obelisk of Sesostris. However, women did have many high-ranking positions in ancient Egypt, and under the right circumstances, a woman could become pharaoh.
I think this speaks to the flexibility of ancient Egyptian ritual. And while male kingship was the norm, the office of king was male for the ancient Egyptians. These aberrations, these exceptions, these remarkable women, like Sobek Nofru and Hatshepsut and later Tawosret and even Cleopatra VII, were able to take over that position when the need arose, particularly in times of strife at the end of the 12th dynasty, when there was no better heir to take over, but even in times of prosperity, like the reign of Hatshepsut. So Sobek Nofru really provides this key in ancient Egyptian history to understanding the power that royal women could wield.
In the Louvre in Paris, among the thousands of ancient Egyptian items, between the many 12th dynasty artifacts almost hidden away, there is the remnants of a statue of Sobek Neferu that shows her as a pharaoh.
This is the torso of Sobek Neferu. Her belt is on her waist with the 3 Nefer signs and the crocodile of Sobek. She wears this shell around her neck, just like her father. And she's shown wearing a striped nemes. Just imagine how she would have looked if her head was still in place. She's here in Paris. Sobek Neferu's legacy is spread throughout the world. You have to really try and piece together her life. That's what I'm going to try and do.
As a woman, I find Sobek Neferu hugely inspirational. There must have been something exceptional about her, that a tradition of male lineage was permitted to be broken in order for her to become the first recorded female pharaoh.
Scattered between the 12th dynasty pieces in Paris is this small female bust. She looks familiar.
She has the hair of Hathor. It's just incredible.
She could be the Sobek Neferu or her sister, Si-Hathor. The exact identity of Si-Hathor is disputed amongst Egyptologists. She is known to have been a princess, however, her father is speculated. Many items in her tomb come from 3 kings' reigns: Sesostris II and III, as well as Amenemhat III. It is most likely that she was the daughter of Amenemhat III, since he is the most recent pharaoh named in her objects, making her the sister of Sobek Neferu. She had a burial prepared in Amenemhat's pyramid. However, she was buried near Sesostris' pyramid. This is not uncommon for a royal to be buried next to another pharaoh's tomb. This is evident from the variety of 12th and 13th dynasty tombs in and around the pyramid of Amenemhat III at Dashur. The beautiful objects from Si-Hathor's tomb include some of the most exquisite jewelry, earrings, bracelets, and more. A gold and inlaid pectoral necklace showing the throne names of Sesostris. Several necklaces and belts were also found with the fertility symbol of the cowrie shell dipped in gold, as well as a very 12th dynasty symbol, a seashell. It is the same kind that we see Sesostris and Amenemhat III wearing on their statues, as well as Sobek Neferu.
What I'm looking at here is some jewelry from the 12th dynasty around the time of Queen Sobek Neferu and Sesostris III. And over there is a little shell, and that shell we can see often during the 12th dynasty.
One item from Si-Hathor's tomb draws my interest more than any other. This crown diadem, surrounded by flowers, with the 2 feathers of Amun and Mut on the back, with a cobra on the brow. I do not believe Si-Hathor wore this. The cobra was reserved for the pharaoh and sometimes queens. Si-Hathor was not a queen. at the Namek, amongst the items found in the tomb of Neferu Ptah, the sister of Sobek Neferu, is a great example of a diadem worn by a princess, and in the Cairo Museum is a princess's silver diadem from the 12th dynasty. I believe this crown could have been worn by Sobek Neferu herself. Si Hathor, who could have outlived Sobek Neferu, could have been buried with the crown, as she was after all buried with objects from other rulers in the family. Hatshepsut, the female pharaoh from the 18th dynasty. She is often shown dressed in male attire. She often appears with a male body and wears the tie-on beard. These attributes are reserved for the pharaoh. They are symbols of divine kingship and are symbolic as such. By wearing the male items only demonstrates to the public that Hatshepsut was a pharaoh. Even the final Cleopatra is sometimes shown in male form, wearing the male attire. A female pharaoh was not that readily accepted, which is why some female rulers presented themselves not only wearing the male adornments, but also in a male stylized body. This was to be accepted. However, Sobek Neferu did not do this. She wore the Nemes headcloth, but presented herself as a woman, a very bold move at the time for a female pharaoh.
You know, at the end of this 12th dynasty, then now there is no heir to the throne.
Yes.
In ancient Egypt, the rule is the king has to be a pharaoh. Women cannot be pharaohs.
Yes.
But a man cannot be a pharaoh without women. And therefore, it doesn't mean that if women cannot be pharaohs, they are low. No. The Egyptian, when they saw Isis crying after she lost Osiris, her tears made the Nile.
Yeah.
She raised Horus to take the revenge from the devil. And therefore, at the end of the Middle Kingdom, there was no higher pharaoh. And this is why Sobek Neferu, as a queen, came to be, I think, to be the second woman to be ruled after the Old Kingdom.
Sobek Neferu continued her father's building projects in the oasis to cultivate new farming lands. She also took on several building projects that had not been completed by her father and brother in the Fayum. At the temple at Medinet Madi, dedicated to the crocodile god Sobek, we can find a very small and fragile remnant of the female pharaoh.
This is the temple here at Medinet Madi, which is dedicated to Renenotet and Sobek. What's interesting is, on the columns, we have the name of Amenemhat III, the father of Sobek Neferu. We have a little cartouche of Sobek Neferu over here, which I'll show to you in a second. Just around the corner, hidden away, badly damaged from rain and from sand. If I climb up here, we have the cartouche of the possible first ever female pharaoh, Sobek Neferu. We see the three Nefers and the Sobek symbol at the bottom. Sobek Neferu, the great female pharaoh that ruled on behalf of her younger brother. As a pharaoh, she was named a pharaoh. This is one of the only remnants that we have of this obscure queen.
It was here at the Temple of Sobek, at Medinet Madi, that a cylinder seal of Sobek Neferu was discovered in 1868. The cylinder has the cartouche of the pharaoh, shown with the crocodile god and the three Nefer glyphs. Above that, she has the title of Nesut Biti, the ruler of Upper and Lower Egypt. As you roll it, we have her Horus name, which tells us that she is the daughter of the sun god that makes Horus joyful in the upper and lower lands. On the other side, she's referred to as Sa'at Neb Tawi, Jed Neb Anktahoru, which means the daughter of the Lord of the Two Lands, the strength of the golden horizon of Horus. At Medinet Madi, several headless statues of Sobek Neferu were also discovered. She also made additions to the temple at Heracleopolis Magna. She also added an inscription at Amenemhat's mortuary temple stating, "This is a place for my father for forever." Yet Sobek Neferu completed a very mysterious building project in Fayum, a project that was linked to the god of her namesake, a place that was massively important in her religious beliefs, one that has caught my attention.
A temple built in the 12th dynasty by Amenemhat and continued by his daughter, the female pharaoh from the 12th dynasty, Sobek Neferu.
Almost nothing remains of the original temple. The Greeks rebuilt it around 300 BC. Only one god is depicted here. The temple may seem small from the outside, but inside it hides many nooks and crannies. To the sides are several small chambers. Exploring down the labyrinth of hallways, we can see that these walls were once decorated. The limestone has been chipped at by ancient Christian visitors seeking to erase the pagan texts. Much of this temple is a mystery, with several pits dug meters down. Water lines lead me to suspect that they were once pools to house crocodiles, connecting Sobek, the energy of the Nile, to this place. A bridge over a 2-floor deep pit crosses over to 3 niches that contain the statues of the god. Crossing the bridge here is unique. I suspect it was to link you to the god Sobek, who lurked in the waters beneath your feet. The unlucky chosen priest was tasked with going down to leave offerings to the temple crocodile. The Greeks called this area Crocodiliopolis, the place of crocodiles.
Here at this temple of Sobek, Sobek is a crocodile god known in the Fayum area. He was a god of war and protection for the pharaoh, and he was mentioned as early as the pyramid text, which we find in the 5th dynasty pyramids of Unas out at Saqqara. So he then later became part of the coffin texts as well, and later the Book of the Dead.
On the roof of the temple is the only inscription still remaining, with its human body and wearing a feathered skirt, holding a was scepter, appearing with a crocodile head, is Sobek, near a slit for light connecting him to Ra.
We're not actually sure why they even decided to build a temple to Sobek out here in this arid landscape with only the Fayum oasis to provide water. Was it to bring healing and protection to this area, yet this area is not a water area? Or was it to invoke the water god, Sobek, the god of the Nile, to direct the Nile to come and make this land fertile?
But this temple raises more questions than answers. What evidence do we have that the ancient Egyptians kept crocodiles in the temple? I am traveling further south to get the answers. It is here at Komombo that another cult center of Sobek was established. This temple was mainly renovated during the Ptolemaic rule, with images having a Greek flair to them, and even some scenes showing the great female pharaoh Cleopatra. Sobek was a crocodile, and therefore he was seen as a god protecting the waters of the Nile.
This temple is dedicated obviously to Sobek, the crocodile god, but also, in part, to Horus. And these two, when they came together, this temple was used in the later period, during the Greek period, as almost like a hospital. People would come here to be healed. Sobek, over here, would then be considered to heal, the skin and burns and things like that. What the Greeks believed Sobek was doing here when they transformed this temple into a hospital. And they then believed that Horus would heal the eyes. So these two gods came together here and were seen as healing deities, but before the Greek time, they had very different roles.
It is at the back of Komombo Temple that we find proof of crocodiles being housed here.
These pits at the back of Komombo are believed to be where they kept the temple crocodile. This would be one crocodile that embodied the spirit of Sobek. They kept them in here, and one priest had the lucky task of getting to put jewelry on this crocodile, and some of them even had painted nails. There are other pits around the temple as well that housed even bigger crocodiles.
Many of these temple crocodiles were mummified when they died. These Nile crocodiles were divine after all. But these were kept in water, in sunlight at Komombo. But this doesn't answer my question about the water pits at Kasr Karun Temple in Fayum. Could Sobek Neferu really have had Nile crocodiles in the dark waters below the temple that survived?
The father of Sobek Neferu, Amenemhat III, shown here with a very slight waist, bigger hips, perhaps an indication of the times to come.
It appears that at the end of Sobek Neferu's father's reign, Egypt was in a steady decline. The coffers had been abused, and the funding began to run dry. Building projects slowed down, mining was reduced, and trade became limited. However, well before Amenemhat III's reign, the people began to complain about the declining economic conditions. The pharaoh decided to start giving concessional rule to noble men throughout Egypt, creating small, independent states that could have their own laws, overseen by one man. We refer to these people as nomarchs. In New York, in the Metropolitan Museum, in their vast Egyptian collection, there is a small statue of a royal woman. She too is wearing a cloak and bears a striking resemblance to the Berlin statue of Sobek Neferu. Could this be her? And just days before bringing this documentary to a close, Dr. Mustafa Waziri announced the discovery of a 12th dynasty temple in the grounds of Luxor, revealing more about Sobek Neferu. Within the remains of the 12th dynasty temple, they discovered a granite bust of a queen. She closely resembles Sobek Neferu, including the same ears, hairstyle, and facial features. Maybe Sobek Neferu is finally wanting to tell her story. Unfortunately, unlike Sesostris and Amenemhat III, Sobek Neferu did not rule long enough to celebrate a jubilee. There is a rock inscription at Semna in Nubia recording the Nile flood in the 3rd year of her reign, and the Turin King's List papyrus records her reign very precisely 3 years, 10 months, and 24 days. The King's List at Abydos in the temple of Seti I from the 19th dynasty, however, excludes Sobek-Neferu and other female pharaohs from the list of kings up to that point in time. She is, however, mentioned at Karnak Temple in the kings list.
We might not know much about her, but the limited number of statues and artifacts that have survived provide some fascinating insights into her life. We know she was depicted as a woman adorning a pharaoh's crown. She even dressed in male regalia, probably to assert her authority and uphold Egyptian tradition. Yet she did this while staunchly retaining her femininity. This speaks volumes about her ability to become a powerful woman in a social system that favored a male line of succession.
We do not know how Sobek-Neferu died. Was she killed? She would have been quite young, between the age of 25 and 35. She would have had good doctors and access to medical treatments at the time. She would have been in good health. It is possible that she was assassinated by a foreign ruler, or by someone who did not agree with a woman being a pharaoh. All images of Sobek-Neferu have been damaged, a clear sign of erasure. Nevertheless, Sobek-Neferu tried her best to maintain Egypt, and given more time, she may have been able to prevent what was to happen next. With the ruling pharaoh Sobek-Neferu now dead, and no heirs to take up power, a new set of rulers were to come in, the 13th dynasty, with a long list of pharaohs using Sobek in their names.
A temple doorway from Pharaoh Sobek-Hotep. Now, there were several pharaohs named Sobek-Hotep. It was a name that was reused. And we can see the name here with the cartouche. Not the original cartouche that was taken out. You can see it's deeper. Obviously, Dynasty 13 leaving their mark.
Yet Sobek-Neferu was to be the last pharaoh of the Middle Kingdom. Shortly after her death, Egypt was divided yet again, with nomarchs taking up power again in their regions, and the Hyksos from the north gaining momentum. Eventually, only a few years after she had died, Egypt was in complete chaos. With no real royal bloodline to rule, the Hyksos started their rule in more regions of Egypt, and the actual Egyptians were being oppressed and suffered greatly for over 150 years, a far cry from the glory of the 12th dynasty. What of Sobek-Neferu's tomb? She never had time to build a pyramid. One structure at North Masguna is suggested to be her unfinished pyramid. However, there is absolutely no evidence of this. There is, however, a place that is most possibly the site of her burial.
We're on our way to go see the Black Pyramid.
The Black Pyramid was built by Amenemhat III. It was one of two that he had made. Both served as a burial site for many of his family members. However, there are two extra burial chambers inside the Black Pyramid. We do not know who was buried in them, but it is highly possible that Amenemhat IV and Sobek-Neferu were buried in these chambers. If there was no time to build their own pyramid, it was seen as perfectly normal to be buried alongside a predecessor's pyramid in the 12th dynasty. Even a pharaoh from the 13th dynasty named Horemheb was interred in this pyramid. This place contained not only the spirits of Amenemhat III and his family, the spirit of Sobek Neferu, but also the spirit of the people of Egypt.